a Look, the podcast bringing back a personal pop culture recommendation with Rin and Roger.
My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. Welcome to Give It a Look podcast. My name is Roger. I'm here as always with my co-host Rin. Hey Rin, the long weekend has recently finished. What's your favourite type of Easter chocky, do you reckon?
The type that is half price the next day after Easter.
Oh, yes. It's our own version of Black Friday, isn't it?
Yeah. People are going to say it's not real chocolate. I love white chocolate or like a caramel kind of egg or something like that. I'm on that white chocolate train.
Do you like cream eggs?
I like a cream egg, but they can be a bit sweet. The older I get, the more I'm like, man, this is too much. I think when I was younger, I was like, yes, because it was a real treat. You weren't allowed to have, like, it's because it's a bit much.
I'm partial to like Turkish Delight eggs because I love Turkish Delight.
Oh, Lord. Oh, geez.
Stuff with filling, you know, Ferrero eggs. And I like the fact that an egg is hollow, which means you can put stuff in it. So I like it when they like put an egg within an egg within an egg. Yeah, it's like a little babushka.
Oh, a little babushka. It just keeps
a surprise with every bite. Well, we are in the last week of Music Month here at Give It a Look. As April comes to a close, we have given each other an album that the other person has never listened to back to front. We're going to start with my recommendation to you, Rin. This was a bit of a hidden gem, I would call it. It is the North Pole Project by Number One Gun. Now, those of you who listened to our episode that featured Amberlynn, I think that was episode 6, would know that I have a particular affection for a quite niche subgenre, which I like to call the Christian-adjacent emo pop-punk music, which both Amberlynn and Number One Gun fit nicely into, and they were label mates on Tooth and Nail Records for a time. So Number One Gun was a 4-piece rock band from Chico, California. They made 2 albums together before they broke up, and then their lead singer, Jeff Schneeweis, started a solo project which he called the North Pole Project. But he was asked by the label whether he could just continue releasing the music under the former name of Number One Gun. So he agreed to do that, and this was the first album in which he did that. So he plays multiple instruments on it. It doesn't quite have the, production values of some of his contemporaries because it was a smaller kind of thing. Since this album, he did another one solo as Number One Gun. He reformed some of the members and did a Kickstarter to make another one. He headed up a totally different 3-piece band called The Make. Now he releases synth pop music under the name Lael and does heaps of production work. I even found out that he's recently been nominated for 2 Grammys.
Oh, wow.
That was for his songwriting and production work with the gospel group Bethel Music. So my boy is kicking goals. So he's a true journeyman and really one of my favourite voices in pop punk, despite him not really being, a household name. He is probably the first artist we've featured on here that I have personally messaged to say that if he wanted to tour Australia, he could stay
at your house?
At my parents' house. No, I was living with my parents when I did it. I never heard back, but Jeff, the offer still stands, my friend. So the North Pole Project is 10 tight tracks of late 2000s punk rock, but it has great drive and great aggression to it. The opening line is him screaming, "Skin it to pieces," in a way that we're used to 30 Seconds to Mars or someone else doing. Tracks like Million seem to hint at his struggle with panic attacks, which he's written about publicly. It's just solid. Again, not going to change your life, but I think if you're a fan of music of this kind of genre and of this kind of time, then there's a lot to like here. What were your opening thoughts on this, Rin?
Like I kind of mentioned with the 1975, I think if 2008 Rin listened to this, she would have been into it. But this is 2022 and Rin is not so much into alternative rock music these days. And that's just how it is. I listened to it and I just thought it was okay. Not that it's bad by any means, just not something I'm listening to at the moment. I wrote in my notes, I'm getting 30 Seconds to Mars vibes. Funny you say that.
It sounds like it kind of missed the window of
Yeah, I think, like last week, as we kind of discussed with Christine and the Queens, like I'm kind of more into that poppy electric kind of stuff I can kind of sing to and have a dance to and have a bop. It's not a boppy album per se. But, You've got very interesting tastes, very niche as well.
What did you make of the vocal performance? Because like I said, I've grown to really like Jeff's tone and his real range of guttural growl all the way up to
I did like it.
Falsetto.
Yeah. Like I said, like I was thinking Jared Leto, and I do like songs that 30 Seconds to Mars have done. I can appreciate it. So this year I'm kind of rating things differently to how I was last year. The way I kind of rated last year was, if I don't hate it, I'll say give it a look. But now my thought process is, if I can't have a dance or a bop, or it's not going to go onto my playlist, then I'm just going to say give it a miss. I think I was being very generous in the past. But
she has raised the standards, people.
Yes, that's right.
And to clarify, it's not a screamo album, but it certainly has that kind of flavouring, I suppose.
Yeah.
Jeff doesn't have a screamo voice.
No, it's just kind of like that alternative rock kind of sound.
We'll get into a few specific tracks. Track 3, The Best of You and Me, does something really interesting with the lyrics. So the lyrics, when they're written down, are, it's a shame and you know this when you roll your eyes back in your head. But what Jeff does is he actually repeats certain syllables so that there's the same amount of syllables in each line. So it becomes, it's a shame and you know this when you roll your eyes back in your head, as if he's stuttering over it. Just a really interesting touch that I haven't really heard in a lot of songs. I also really like Bad Habits, track 5. It has this absolutely barnstorming chorus, which feels like you're going off on a gallop as the drums and guitar kick in. There's also really nice piano lines and some strings that come in during some of the slower songs as well. It all wraps up with a lovely, charming acoustic jam called This Holiday, which kind of brings things home with a little bit of a kind of Christmas Santa-y vibe. I mean, this is called the North Pole Project.
Yes.
I don't know why it's like that. It's not a Christmas album, people. Don't be deceived.
No. How often do you think you would say that you listen to this album, or do you just have kind of like odd songs that you have in your playlists?
I didn't find Number One Gun until a few years after this came out, and it was the algorithm that brought it to me. And there was a different album that I was listening to. But I really loved Jeff's voice, and I like to do a deep dive when I really like someone's work. I'm going to find all the things, and that's why I really like The Make. And now the stuff he's doing with Lael is really great, but it has a very different feel to it.
When you hear an artist or a person or like an actor or something, and you just become like infatuated with them, as you are, because you invited him to stay at your parents' house. You do that deep dive, don't you? You watch all the things they're in, or you see all the trailers, or you watch all the interviews and you listen to all the music, or, you know, things like that.
It is a little bit different nowadays because I don't have as much spare time to really do that. But yeah, this is back in my student days where I was just like, I'm going to devote a whole Saturday to zeroing in on Jeff Schneewees.
Were you ever that kid that would like wear guy liner and then do the scene kind of fringe?
You've never asked me that. Now, I did dye my hair once in year 12. I dyed it black, but was never doing fringe, was never doing makeup or nail polish or anything like that. Like a lot of us who became fans of emo music, it felt like someone could relate to how dramatic my life felt at the time.
Yes.
Like everything about emo music feels so like desperate and like this is the most important thing ever, you know.
Not that I was ever like that goth kid or emo kid, but I think I thought I tried to be, and so I'd wear like things that were like black striped, or I'd try and put on like eyeliner. When we first became friends, like I had that really dense fringe. Do you remember that? Yeah. So I had that for the longest time, and I thought I was like really cool. Oh, look at me. Don't talk to me.
What's interesting is that in the same way that disco was big in the 60s, emo music, it's such a distinct phase of when it was really big, and that it's not really happening in this next generation. Say what you want about bloody Machine Gun Kelly doing Emo Girl. That's not what it is. That's not what it is. Like, you got to go back to the source. And maybe we have some younger listeners who are kind of intrigued about some of the big ones, and we've discussed them in passing. It sounds like maybe Number One Gun may have joined that pantheon if it hit at the right time, but maybe not at this point. What's my jam, you reckon, Rin?
My guess is Bad Habits.
Good guess. It's top 2. I really like The Best of You and Me, though. Yeah, I really like the layering. It has this really cool kind of synth line that goes over it and seesaws between different pitches and whatnot, and great harmonies as well. That was half the fun of emo music as someone who enjoyed singing along to harmonies. So that is my yam.
Excellent.
All you potato lovers out there.
Overall, my verdict, I'm going to say give it a miss from me. Not to say, again, it's bad. It's just not my jam.
Hey everyone, we wanted to take a minute to tell you about our new friends at ZeroCo. ZeroCo make incredible home cleaning and personal care products conveniently delivered direct to your door, minus all the single-use plastic. They're Australian made and owned, all their products are plant-based and feature carbon-negative delivery. The way it works is super simple. You order, ZeroCo deliver, you return their reusable liquid pouches and ZeroCo refill them. It's like the milkman reimagined. If you're new to ZeroCo, use our affiliate link in the episode description and get yourself one of their convenient starter kits. Not only will you be cutting down on household waste and helping clean up our oceans, beaches and landfill, you'll also be supporting this podcast. ZeroCo. Give single-use plastic the flick.
Moving on, my album for you this week was The Secret Life of by the Veronicas. The Veronicas are a duo. They're both twins, Jess and Lisa, and they're from Brisbane originally. I think I first came to this album by just listening to it on the radio in the car on the way to wherever, school or home or what have you. I would have been like 12, and so it was like my preteen, and I think it was kind of like one of my first introductions to kind of that pop punk rocky kind of vibes. And I remember getting it for, I think, Christmas that year. Yeah, an album. You remember those albums?
Best gift ever.
And I'm pretty sure I still have it locked away somewhere, like in my storage or something. I just really loved it because the song I heard was Forever. So that was like their first single that was released. They performed that song at the 2005 NRL Grand Final just before they released their debut album. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really good marketing, isn't it? Because obviously, you know, it's such a big event. The album got released several days later and it went like number 2 in Australia, and they released 5 singles as well. I really enjoy this music. I think it's fun. It's catchy. The girls, I think, were probably like 21 when they came out with this as well. So they were quite young. Our mate, Max Martin, co-wrote and also produced some of them. So I was like, oh, hello. You snuck back in there, didn't you, mate? What did you think of this album?
Well, let's try and put ourselves in the mindset of Jess and Lisa. It must have been so exciting to have Max Martin write 2 of your lead singles, those being Forever and Everything I'm Not. And he famously reused the melody of Forever in Pink's You in Your Hand as well.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm not sure why that was. Maybe he felt it had more to give. They were trying to give it as much global appeal as they could, and whether or not it kind of achieved certain goals in the US market, maybe it fell a bit short and he thought, no, we've got something good here and we're going to reuse it for Pink. As a collective, they really come out fully formed, you know, with global appeal in the same way that another Brisbane band, Savage Garden, I think, did in the 90s. You know, listen to their debut album and to I Want You and tell me that's not a hit across the world, is what I'm trying to say.
They marketed themselves very well. I don't know if you ever had Foxtel growing up. No. So for our listeners who don't know what Foxtel is, it is like a cable service as such.
Horrendously overpriced.
Correct. I used to watch a lot of Disney Channel. So I lost my, obviously, like teenage, preteen mind when they appeared as special guests on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, because that's a show about twins and they're twins. And their song Forever as well was featured in She's the Man, you know, the movie with Amanda Bynes. I used to be a big fan of The Sims 2, right? And one day I'm playing it and I hear in Simlish the song When It All Falls Apart. And I'm going to get you to put a link in our description because people need to hear this.
Oh, I'll gladly put that in. So it would have been like, yeah.
A Kamashanana. Like,
there used to be like so many shows that would feature real life bands on them.
Yeah.
The Goo Goo Dolls were on Charmed.
whoa.
The Dandy Warhols were on Veronica Mars. Like, this was something that used to happen 15 years ago. You don't really see it anymore. There used to be like a live music venue that was kind of written into the fabric of the thing. Going back to 2005 when this was released, the music landscape was quite different, and the Veronicas arrived into a world that was enamored with, Kelly Clarkson, Avril Lavigne, hints of Tattoo and No Doubt, Alanis Morissette, Evanescence, Joan Jett. These are all kind of across this album. I actually was able to kind of write one of these names next to most of the tracks in this album and going, oh yeah, this is the blah, blah, blah song. Yeah. Now, that's not necessarily bad, but it just shows that I think being a first album, their producers were definitely like throwing darts at the US market and seeing what stuck, and they would have had a lot of control. I think I've enjoyed the Veronicas more once they matured a bit and were able to kind of have a bit more control about the music they wanted to make.
And they've come out with so many bangers since this debut album. From the top going down, I think that's like basically like the order of how good the songs are in a way. Not to say that there's bad songs at the bottom, but I find that Mother Mother at the end is very angsty. Like, there's a bit of screaming in there, and I'm like, oh, okay, end of album. The song Revolution, to me, it sounds like a real like anthem song. But
that's the Avril Lavigne song. Speaking of Mother Mother, I had a whole bunch of dissonance when I heard that, because I was like, wait a minute, this isn't a Veronica song, is it? Wait, is it? I haven't heard this song in ages. It's not a Veronica song, is it? It's not. It is a cover of Tracy Bonham, because...
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that was a big song in 96, one of those one-hit wonders. The synths and the chords and the call and response at the start of When It All Falls Apart, they just hit the music pleasure centres, don't they?
Yes, There's some like grit in there as well, and I just get goose pimples. I'm like, ooh.
That's the Alanis Morissette song for me, that one. I think that the melodies and the fundamentals are really solid. Pretty much all of these songs would sound really good stripped back as well.
Yeah.
I found some of the ballads a bit generic. Also, when they're singing, sometimes when they're really high in their register, it doesn't always do it for me. I mean, obviously they're straining to get to those notes, but some people might describe it as kind of shrill. Track 5, Secret, I didn't really know what to make of it at first, because it's interesting, isn't it? The gist of it is the singer is saying that this person that they thought was gay was in fact not gay, and just like not saying anything and watching them do things like undress and things like that, and wasn't saying anything. But they were also assuming that this person was under a certain persuasion of sorts. But, I know what you mean. On first listen, I thought it was a bit mean-spirited, and I was like, oh, gee, I wonder if they would still stand by this, particularly, Jess.
Yes.
But the more I listened to it, the more I was like, well, it's not like it's saying, ew, gross, like this guy's gay kind of thing. It's more telling kind of a cheeky story of...
They assumed that this person was gay, and so they were getting changed in front of them and doing all these things I suppose they would just do in front of their girlfriends. But in fact, this person was just not being truthful and kind of doing a bit of a dodgy...
And ultimately they're saying they're not interested in them.
No, correct.
So I was surprised and quite impressed by how much the song Heavily Broken really commits to the heavier Evanescence / Puddle of Mud sound. I reckon this is like the female version of Puddle of Mud's Blurry, if anyone is familiar with that. Or Low by Kelly Clarkson, which seems to share a bit of DNA with that song as well. So some decent versatility and some decent rock chick chops, even though they're not playing the instruments. Do you have any particular memories or core memories around this album? Because it's coming out at a pretty important time for y'all.
I think I just remember being in the car and hearing Forever, and I was like, oh yeah, that is so cool. Forever, like the number 4, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, that's genius. Because it was kind of the time of, we were all on MSN and things like that, wasn't it? Good
Flip
times.
Phones.
Yeah, 2005 was the year I got my first mobile, and it was my mum's old Nokia, and it had Snake 2 on it. I still have the CD somewhere, so with a collection. I think I got that album, The Secret Life of, and I think I don't know if you know who Stephanie McIntosh was. Do you remember her? So she used to be on Neighbours. Yeah. And so I got her album as well.
I don't want to make another mistake again.
Good times, good vibes. I was doing some reading as well about their name because originally they were just calling themselves, I think, the Twins. Remember we were talking about Mr. Robot and we're talking about Christian Slater. And I mentioned that he was in a movie called Heathers, right? So apparently this is where the girls got their name from because Christian Slater says, oh, are you one of the Heathers? And she goes, no, I'm a Veronica. And then I was reading that there was like this massive like lawsuit to do with their name, like the Veronicas, and then the Archie comics with Veronica Lodge and things like that. So it was like a big thing apparently.
Yeah, I like it. From what I've heard, I think they've kept it pretty real over the years. I have people I know that have had a crack at the music industry, and the Veronicas were really helpful at giving them some exposure and taking them on tour and whatnot. Yeah, I think you're going to get the most out of this album if you realise that you're here to relive some mid-2000s fun.
Yeah.
And just realise that it was the start of something for them, a solid start. But for me, a lot of the slaps came later in their career with...
Well, yeah, they've got like Hook Me Up, Untouched, which is the ultimate banger. In My Blood as well. Amazing. All good. And it's always nice to have like really successful Australian artists as well. It's nice to support them. Here's another core memory. I had their songs on my MP3 player. Remember them?
Yes.
MP3 players. Yes. Time for you now to guess what's my jam.
Is it Everything I'm Not? I'm going to guess that because you mentioned that you kind of like the start tracks, lead singles more.
No. It's When It All Falls Apart. Yeah, it's the one that was in the Simlish. How good is the Sims?
Swing and a miss. Well, my recommendation, I'm going to say give it a look. Yeah, I think get yourself in the mind frame of a mid-2000s tween if you can. Maybe you weren't even born at that point, so that could be hard for you. So if you'd like to listen to The Secret Life of the Veronicas or The North Pole Project by Number One Gun, they are available on your favourite streaming services. That is the end of Music Month for April. It will return at some point in the future, not putting a date on it or anything. We like to surprise you. Let us know what you think. What was your favourite album that we covered? What's the album that's been rocking your autumn of 2022? A new discovery maybe? Please let us know on social media. Where can people find us, Rin?
On Insta and Twitter, you can find us at Give It a Look Pod. And if you want to email us at giveitalook1@outlook.com.
Boom. Got it down pat. We are so well rehearsed with this part. I love it. Cool. Heading into May, we are going to go back to our OG format. We're looking back at films. So what is your first recommendation of a film for me, Rin?
I am giving you Rocket Man, the movie about Elton John. So enjoy. It's amazing.
Yeah, nice. And I am giving you 2005's Serenity, otherwise known as Firefly the movie. We talked a little bit about Firefly a few episodes ago. I saw this film before I saw the series, and I enjoyed it so much that it got me into the series. I'm interested to hear someone's perspective who isn't as familiar with the series and whether it still worked. So we will see you next week for that. Rin, any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, a lot of people cry when they cut onions, but the trick is not to form an emotional attachment to them. So there you go.
But they're just so cute. They're the most cuddly of vegetables. See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.